Matt, your book tackles a subject that is near and dear to me, which is simplifying your idea, simple
Yeah.
communication, which, as we both know, simple is hard. It's very hard to take something complex and make it simple, which is why I think it's a foundational skill. In your book, you offer 4 qualities of what you call a focused message. But again, it all speaks to a message that is focused, simple, easy to understand. I think these 4 qualities of a focused message or attributes are very important. So let's go through each one. First, precision. Clarify your goals. Okay, what exactly do you mean by that?
So I believe whenever we speak, spontaneous or in person or practiced, is we need to make sure we have a goal. Communication is a goal-driven activity. And to me, a goal has 3 parts. It's about information, emotion, and action. What is it I want to get across? That's my information. Emotion, how do I want people to feel upon hearing my information? Do I want them excited, concerned, validated, empowered, fear of missing out? What is it? And then finally, most communication, not all, but most communication strives for some kind of action. So I think to myself, if I'm planning a pitch or a presentation, I think, what's my goal for my audience? If I'm in the moment or I'm walking into a situation like an interview where I expect to be put on the spot, I think, what's my goal? The goal helps you focus. It helps you prioritize. It helps you determine what to say versus what not to say. Part of being simple and concise is about having a clear goal as to what you're trying to achieve. And by the way, a goal gives you a way to assess your success. I like you, Carmine, I do this all over the place. I do all over the world, coaching people, teaching people. I will ask people, how do you know if your communication was successful? And the number one answer I get is, I got through it, as if survival is the success metric. And that's ridiculous, right? So I think the goal, are people leaving knowing what you want them to know, feeling how you want them to feel, and doing what you want them to do, is a much better way to assess success. So it helps you prioritize and measure success.
I'm glad you put as one of your goals, as one of the goals that people should think about before speaking, is what do you want your audience to do? Recently, in some of my classes, I co-teach with someone who has a long career in finance and investment. And when he talks about communication, he says the number one thing that people forget when they are giving any kind of pitch to investors or to financial types is, what do you want me to do? You want me to invest money? How much? Exactly. What do you want me to do? Don't talk around it. I don't have that much time. Get me involved in the message. Tell me what you're doing. Tell me why, what the benefit is. But what do you want me to do? And he really harps on this. So that tells me that in the thousands of pitches he has seen, that's something that people don't think about. What do I want my audience to do with the information?
I totally agree. And I would go one step further. You have to be very succinct and specific. I coach a lot of entrepreneurs. I know you do something similar. The mistake they make is they say, I want your support.
Yes, it's big. Exactly. That's what he was saying.
Yeah. So do you want a check? Do you want me to like a social media post? Do you want me to open up my Rolodex and introduce you to people? Be specific.
So that's one quality of having a focused message. I love it. Have clear goals. What do you want people to know, feel, and do? Excellent. Self-explanatory. Now I understand it. It's great. But the second quality is really important as well. Your message has to have relevance. I guess this is answering the question that I learned in journalism school. Why should your audience care?
That's exactly right. By understanding what's relevant and important and salient to your audience, you can focus your message around it. We often assume that our audience will be as concerned or excited about the things we are for the same reasons. And that's not correct. The very first psychology class I ever took as an undergraduate, the professor came in and said, the interesting thing about common sense is it's not so common. And yet we carry around that everybody sees the world the way we do. So you have to do reconnaissance, reflection, and research about your audience to understand what's important and relevant to them. And then you can tailor messages around it, which means if you're planned presenting, you might have to craft a different presentation if the audience changes, because what's important to them will be different. In a spontaneous situation, you very quickly have to say what's most important to this audience in this moment. And you use clues not just about who's in the room, but where is the room? Am I at a conference? Am I in the C-suite executive boardroom? So location of speaking can help you understand what's most relevant. Time of day can help you. So we have to pay attention not just to who's in the room, but the environment and what we know about timing to help us really hone the message. Sometimes the most relevant thing I can do, I'm often asked to speak at events. I know you are too. And I don't know if your situation's like mine. I'm often the person who goes right after lunch on like the last day because I'm the person who brings a lot of energy and people, and so I have to remember what's relevant to these people is that in a half hour, they have to catch a flight to get home. So I need to be really concise and clear. So the environment helps as well. So it's all about making it relevant. You got to know who's in the room, who's listening to you, what's important to them.
The third attribute of a focused message is accessibility.
Yeah.
Accessibility. So in other words, I would imagine making things easy to understand and not complicated. Accessible. Reducing jargon, for example, would make it accessible.
Absolutely. Yeah. Acronyms, jargon, we use them all the time and it gets in the way. So
that's not knowing your audience.
Absolutely. Yeah, these
that
all
touches
interrelate. It's a Venn diagram. These are not separate and distinct. They all overlap. You have to know your audience. But accessibility to me is the opposite of dumbing something down. I work with a lot of people who are very technical, very scientific, very financial. It's not about dumbing down the information. It's about making it accessible. So you can make things accessible in many ways. For example, you can diagram it. You can break it into constituent parts. You can use analogies, metaphors, comparisons. These are tools that allow you to take something that's very complex and make it simpler. I know you and I have both resonated with Hans Rosling. He's passed away, but he was a master at taking very complex data, very complex ideas, and making them accessible to people. Because I'm often asked, give me an example, and I always point to him. So there are ways to take complex information and make it really understandable for your audience, and you have to practice that. That's a skill, right? And so in the moment, knowing that analogies tend to work for you, you could find an analogy that can work, or knowing that deconstructing things works for you, in the moment, you can then deconstruct things, but you have to practice that.
And fourth and finally, very important, concision, conciseness.
Yes.
This answers the question, why are people so long-winded?
Exactly. Concision is key. And as a joke, I could just stop right there, but I won't. I'll say more. My mother has this saying, I know she did not create it, but I love it. It is, tell me the time, don't build me the clock. Many of us are clock builders when we communicate, partly to justify our positions, partly because we want to demonstrate our competence and our thoroughness. But the reality is people only need what they need, so give it to them. So again, you have to understand who your audience is. Say things simply when you can. You can use lots of big words to make the same point as simple words. So find ways to communicate and prioritize what you want to say, and find language that matches that. In the world of improvisation, and I'm a big fan of improv, I'm certainly not very good at it. They will play games that have restrictions to it. So it might be, tell a story in 100 words, and then they'll say, tell the same story in 50 words. Now tell that same story in 25 words. What this is actually teaching you is how to prioritize what's important and how to make word choices that help give impact, but very quickly. So concision, really important. Tell the time, do not build the clock.